Hello, welcome to Greenwood Bonsai Studio today. I've just got a little bit of time this afternoon before I start teaching tomorrow, and we've started repotting some of our trees already this year. It's beginning of Feb. Some of the trees that leaf out the earliest in the UK are the larch, the European and Japanese larch. So I'm going to do a little presentation for you on repotting a couple of larch trees in my studio in a little while. But before I do, I'm outside on the benches and I thought I'd show you this as a bit of interest. We're refurbishing our shop here at Greenwood. We're just starting that process, and we were hunting through one of the storerooms and we found some old magazines. We found this old magazine, the Bonsai UK magazine. Used to come out like 4 times a year. This is the autumn edition 1993, and the cover photograph here is a Japanese larch group that my father, Harry Tomlinson, put together in the late 70s. It features in his book. Here it is in autumn foliage, and here's the group behind the magazine here out on our bench. It's on display at Greenwood Bonsai for anyone that wants to come up and view it. It's an interesting part of our heritage here at Greenwood to see this tree from years ago. 30 years ago it looked like this, and how it's progressed over that time. So this one doesn't need repotting at the moment. This was done last year, but inside in the studio we've got a couple of larch that do want repotting. Larch are a very versatile species for bonsai. We use them quite a lot here in the UK. They're quite widely grown for forestry use, you know, as areas of Norfolk and Northumberland and Scotland, where there's very large plantations of larch. The thing that confuses people in the UK is they assume that if they dig a larch up out the wild, they think it's a European larch. And often the case, if they dig one up out the wild, it's actually a Japanese larch, because Japanese larch are the ones that have been predominantly planted for forestry use in the UK. So you could dig a larch up from a hillside in Scotland, and there's more chance of it being a Japanese larch than it being a European larch. The difference between the two generally is the Japanese larch like this, the new tips on them are have got a red colour, like a cinnamon tinge to them. If you look here, this one's been trimmed back recently. You can see a little bit on this younger growth here, look. And the European larch, this new growth is more like a barley colour, like a straw type, more yellow. Here we've got an example of larch put together as a group planting. We've got some examples of individual trees here. They suit a formal upright, they suit an informal upright. And I'm going to take you in the studio and show you a couple of examples that are due for repotting. So we'll head in there. It's a bit warmer and we'll see what we can do. So we're here in the studio, a little bit warmer in here with a log burner going, so t-shirts on in February here at Greenwood. A couple of larch that are in here for repotting. They've been in here a few days. In fact, this one, last week when it came in here, we'd got a cold spell and it was frozen, so it's just been defrosting, ready for a repot. Larch are a very tough tree. They cope very well with cold weather, so it's not an issue to bring it in here, throw it out, repot it and put it back outside. We're now going through a warmer period here in the UK in very, very early spring. We like to be optimistic. We call it early spring instead of late winter. So these two trees, this is a European larch, and like I said earlier, outside you can see these branches, the new twigs are more of a yellow colour on this. This particular one came in from a retired collector, and we've trimmed back the top of this. It was a little bit kind of hairy and it's just been trimmed back, and I've also removed quite a few cones off it. It was quite full with cones, and they do sap energy from the tree. I mean, they look nice, but we tend to leave them on for a year and then remove them. So that's had all the cones taken off, it's been trimmed. And we did show you this on one of our videos around October time. We showed you this because we said that it was in this pot here, which, although it's a nicely made pot, it's a John Pitt pot, it doesn't really suit the tree. And I found this pot, it's an Ian Bailey pot, a vintage Ian Bailey pot, and I think the cragginess, the rustic features on this pot suit the aged bark of the tree a little bit more. So we're going to see if we can get it into there. And so there we've got an example of a sort of, it's a Yamadori. It was a collected tree from the wild originally. We've got good movement in the trunks, craggy old bark, deadwood feature, sort of a twin trunk or sort of semi-cascade style, depending on the orientation of it, I suppose. And this is another sort of cascade style larch. This belonged to the late great Paul Goff, very talented bonsai artist and professional photographer. He did all the photography for my father's book, the complete book of bonsai, published a book himself on bonsai display, and this tree featured in that book. It's been in my collection for about 4 years now. It's in a handmade pot by Corin Ceramics. It's ready for repotting. Again, that has already been pruned and trimmed to take back some of the longer shoots. A little Corin in here, look, at the back there. Another one here, a couple that I've missed, but I took most of them off. So we're just going to try and get these out and get them done. We always start off here in the UK doing the larch because they can leaf very early. Then we'll move on to maples, hornbeams, birch, that sort of thing. And then we'll always end up the repotting season here with fagus, beech and oak, that sort of thing that leaf very late. Now, whenever I do these videos like this at this time of year, you know, we did one the other week on Japanese black pines, and a lot of people then commented saying, oh, is it the right time to do Japanese black pines? And I said, well, no, unless you've got thousands of them to do. Yeah, so we're doing these a little bit early. You know, if you've just got a Japanese larch or a European larch in your collection, you've got probably any time in the next 4 weeks to repot it. But we have to start a bit earlier and we have to finish a bit late, otherwise we won't get all the trees done that we need to do. So we're always trying to extend the potting season in spring to allow us to cope with the workload. Yeah, so if you've got one and you haven't done it yet, don't worry, you've got a few weeks left if you're here in the UK to get your larch potted. So without much more of ado, we'll get set up. I'll get one out of the pot and we'll see what it's like to get potted up. Right, so now then, for this repotting demonstration, I'm just going to recap on what I've done for the last 5 minutes. Because what I've done for the last 5 minutes is I've snipped the wire underneath this pot and I've gone around the edge of the pot with a saw and a reciprocating saw, and I've lifted the tree out. Now, while I was busy doing that, what Josh hasn't done for the last 5 minutes, my cameraman, he hasn't pressed record. Yeah, so although that was a really nice demonstration I did, showing you how to get it out of the pot, because we didn't actually record it, it's now done and I can't stick it back in. So all I've done, I've worked around the edge of the pot, I've used this old saw to get the tree out, and I've used a bit of a helping hand with a reciprocating saw. So a lot of people, now I mentioned this earlier but we didn't record it, so I'll mention it again. This pot's got an incurve on it, yeah? Now a lot of people worry about this sort of pot because they think if they put a tree in it that they're really going to struggle to get the tree out of the pot. It's not always the case. You can get the tree out fairly easily, you just need a little bit of help and assistance. It's not a reason to not purchase a pot like this purely to have an easy life. It just, in reality, it takes a minute or two longer to just slide it out of the pot. So here it is, as we've just taken it out of the pot. Now, we're going to put that pot to one side because we think we're not going to need it, but we might revisit it in 10 minutes if the other pot isn't suitable. So here we've got the tree and we'll slide it towards me here now. So the easiest way to deal with this root mass is again to probably just use reciprocating saw and just take an inch or two off the bottom of that. And again, as we mentioned earlier, being very careful with the bark. So if I just hold it at sort of one contact area up here carefully, and then with this recip saw, we could just cut through it like that, at that sort of height, and then just a bit of pruning on those roots. Let's just angle the tree back down, be very careful with it. And then this excess root, we can just scrape that into the bin like that as we go. Then take the rest of the tree just over the edge of the table. Use a wooden handled root hook and we'll do it around here so you can see a little bit more what we're doing. I'm just going to start combing out around the edge of the roots just to break up the root ball, the shape, the size of it. This tree had probably been in here for a couple of years, so it was probably good for another couple of years in that pot. Like I said, with this tree, it's recently come into my collection, and although that was a nice pot it was in, it didn't really suit the tree, and I'm lucky that I found another pot which I think is going to suit it more if I can actually physically get the tree into that pot. So here we've got the old wire that was tying the tree in, so it was snipped underneath, wasn't it? So that's just a bit of it still stuck in there. Look, it's actually got a twist on both sides, so there's one bit there to pull out, and then there's another bit just round this side. I can't really get to it very easy or show you, but you have to. There we go. Look. Now this root here, we've cut the end of it off. That's okay. We don't need it, and I'm going to shorten it back to here. Take this little piece off here. Work our way round, and again, easiest way to do this. You know, it's not a massive tree, but if it's a larger tree, it's so much easier just to lean it over the edge of the table carefully and just rake it out straight into a bin under the table. Just keep working our way around. The pot it's going into is a similar sort of volume to the one it came out of, so we've not essentially got to take many roots off this, but we just want to get rid of some of this old soil and some of these heavier roots that are going to help us to get it into the pot. And we might be able to sort of just tilt it over a little bit more than it was before. Just careful it doesn't wobble itself off the table. Comb it all the way round into here. Again, being careful, this is a good area to hold it in. A little bit of pruning here. And a rake on the underside of the root ball. Just to soften up those roots. A little bit of a trim with some Greenwood scissors. Super sharp, ideal scissors for trimming roots when you're doing this sort of work. And just tidy that up. Some of these long ones. Just neaten it up, make it a bit less hairy, like that. And then we can offer it up to the pot and let's have a little look. So let's just pop that back down there for now. I'm just going to brush off some of the soil surface in here at the front. Just use a stiff house brush for that. So some of these roots that are just growing up a little bit too much, just going to trim a few of those off just to neaten up this surface. A few of these little straggly ones here aren't really doing anything, so I'm just tidying those up like that. Let's see if we can get it in that pot, see what it looks like. Oh, there's another wire there, look. That's 3 wires we took out of here, so somebody really didn't want it falling out of the pot. There's another one there. Sometimes you get people, they'll repot a tree and they either won't find these wires or they just won't bother removing them, so you can end up with quite a few sometimes. Let's have a look round, remove them if we can. Right, let's have a little look at that. Where's my pot gone? It's behind me. So, this was the Ian Bailey pot that we hoped would be suitable. For this tree. Beautiful design pot, really nice. And if we have it side by side with this one, look, it's a little bit shallower, so it'll give more power to the tree. This pot's quite portly, shall we say, quite a dominant pot, weighty pot, and it's just a bit too heavy for the tree. And this is just, it's almost the same sort of volume, but it's just going to be a bit lighter. We'll try it in and see. My only concern is this branch, this second trunk that hung over to the left, it managed to hang over because this went in. And because this one is more vertical, I don't know if it will clear. It should clear, but I don't know because I've not tried it. So again, very careful when we pick it up like this into here. See, this is what I'm worried about. We don't want contact between that trunk and the pot, so we need to be here with the tree. Once tilting forward a little bit more, twisting around a little bit more. I want to be, the potting angle of this tree is pretty much dictated by this space. I need that to be about there. I don't want that touching like this. We don't want it laid down like that. Yeah, a little bit of bark fell off. I want it to be about here. So, which gives more movement to this, brings this down further. So I'd be happy with it if I can get it to that sort of that space within the pot. So what we'll do, so we can get it into a good position, it not move, let's get the pot ready for the tree. So again, and I'm just lifting it here again by that gin. That's quite strong, quite sturdy, so it's a good little place to pick it up carefully like that. So let's have a look. We think we're going with this pot now, don't we? So let's just have a quick tidy up, like so, and the pot here. So we'll put a couple of wires into this pot. We're not going to need a saw anymore. And it's quite a busy time for us here at Greenwood at the moment. Like I say, we've got lots of trees coming in, new arrivals, new stock. I've got customers' trees to repot, got my own trees to repot, we've got new stock to repot. And tonight I've got a little bonsai demonstration locally. We've got workshop tomorrow, teaching students. And then we've got the upcoming weekend, we've got back-to-back introductory bonsai courses here in the studio. So we've got in total 20 new students arriving this weekend to participate in our introductory bonsai course. So it's all a busy time of year for us. And in recent years, you know, with COVID and stuff, there's not been so many. For people like myself, there's been less travelling, less demonstrations, that sort of thing. And now that's sort of all back to normal. We're getting a lot of insurgence of demonstrations and gigs and events and that sort of thing. We just had an email today about a Japanese festival that's happening locally, and they want us to attend with a bonsai and do demonstrations and things throughout the day. So that should be interesting. We haven't attended that before. It's the first time there's been one nearby, so that'll be different. I'm just going to wire this mesh in. So the wire to hold the tree in here has gone a bit thicker than usual because I want to make sure it's nice and tight on the tree. And this mesh, to stop it moving about, oh, you've probably seen me before, just make a little loop like that. And I always put these with the loops external underneath the pot and bring it through the mesh like that on the inside. So we've got no sharp edges under the pot. You'll see people do this and put them in the other way around, which never makes as much sense to me. Always seems to be better for me to do it this way. So just bend them edges out inside, then the pot will be ready. Now, a mixture of compost that we're using for this, the soil, we're using a 3-part mix, 3 equal parts of akadama, Japanese akadama, hard grade, Kirizuna, hard grade, and Japanese pumice. So quite an open, free draining mixture. Now larch, in the UK in particular, you know, in Wales and in Scotland and the forestry areas, they're quite willing to grow in quite peaty, boggy conditions without much of an issue. But once you put them into a container, they're better off in something freer draining. So the mixture that we've come to, look, is that, like I say, that's a 3rd akadama, 3rd kiryu, and 3rd lava. Now obviously, if you're not watching it in the UK, you've got a different climate, different watering regimes, and different availability of particular products. So we don't mention compost too much because it doesn't always translate to other countries that well. But it's just worth mentioning this time what we're using. And to be honest, if you wanted to use this sort of mix in the UK, you could use that for probably 90% of your trees without any issue. So the pot, handmade pot, as we said earlier, obviously it's a one-off piece, but it's a vintage pot. It's had some age to it before. It's been outside, it's nicely weathered, it's got some patina on it. I think we're going to go with that front. That side looks a bit more weathered and a little bit more crusty and a bit more lived in, yeah? Probably because that might be north facing, you know, before when the tree was in it. This side looks a bit fresher and cleaner, doesn't it? And maybe that was the front and the previous owner just sort of cleaned the front of the pot and didn't do the back. But I'm going to use this mucky side here, yeah, because it looks a bit more in keeping with the tree. I don't want it looking too new and too fresh. So we'll start off by putting a mound of compost in the bottom of the pot, and then get myself set up. Tree. Get it over here, look. Obviously it's tricky because I've got to do this from the front so I can see what I'm doing, but it does mean you perhaps can't see what I'm doing, so we'll turn it around once it's done. I've got quite a bit of soil underneath here, so we can take the tree and sort of settle it down onto that. I don't want it too low in the pot. I need to be able to get this hole here, this movement as we drift over the edge of the pot. This is the important bit I'm looking at. So if we moved it a little bit more to the left in the pot, that would work. Let's just tilt that up. Got a bit more under here, and again grabbing bits that haven't got any bark on them. Just here, something like that. Now, because the design of this tree, we are going to have more space here than we've got here. So normally we'd have it more on the right hand side of the pot, but obviously if I move it over here, I'm going to start colliding here. So as I said before, I'm pretty much dictated by this elbow, because that's the bit that's going to annoy me if it isn't right. So I think in here, I'm happy with that. So if we're happy with that, then we can add some more of the compost in. And as usual, sort of forget about that wire. We'll address that last of all. I've got 2 wires here. We're going to get this compost in first, all the way around the tree. In here. And with a potting stick, this sort of jumbo potting stick. Got a few of these on our website now. A friend of mine turns them down on his lathe, especially for us. And he's made some out of oak, some out of teak and some out of mahogany. So if you're the sort of bonsai person that's got everything, what you probably haven't got is a mahogany potting stick. Yeah, so they were the must-have Christmas present for the bonsai enthusiasts that had literally got everything. They didn't realise they needed a mahogany potting stick until we put them on the website, and then they realised that's just what they had missing from their life. So go all the way around like that. You can see the soil level start to drop as it gets worked into the roots as we work our way round, and we need to pay particular attention to this side here, because that will just, with the weight of the tree, this side can drop, and if it drops again, obviously it's going to be against the pot, which is going to be an issue. Again, look at that soil level dropping down as we work it down around the root ball. Just nice and gentle with that. Okay, you're definitely recording this, are you, Josh? We're recording, are we? Just double checking now. From now on, I'm just going to check on it every 5 or 10 minutes. Is that all right? Josh is shaking his head behind the camera. Right, so the wire, pull it across here, and this one across to meet it, and just pull it tight and twist it to take up the slack. Just push that root in like that, and then the other one, come across. Just take it under this one. It's a bit tricky to see, so apologies for that. Gonna wire it through here. Just bring it across. Same thing, just twist it over on this side. You've seen that been done many times, I'm sure. Just twist it to take up the slack. Go back to the wire cutters, just trim off any excess wire here. Just trim that off. Push that down into the soil. Do the same for this little hidden one around the front, like that. So I'm just going to finish up tidying up this surface, and I'm going to lift it up behind me and show you it all potted. Okay, so we've got this potted. Really pleased with how it's gone. Let me just turn it around so you can see. Pop it up here. So we've got it out of that heavy pot it was in before. Like I say, it's a nice pot. It's just a bit too bulbous and heavy for the tree, and it was in this one before, and it just takes your eye too much. It's a nice finish and everything, but the shape wasn't so good, and now the tree is more impressive. You notice the tree before you notice the pot, but the pot enhances the composition, the rusticness of this pot. Beautiful with the old bark on this European larch, originally a collected tree from the wild, areas of deadwood on it. And over the next few years, this is a recent addition to our collection here at Greenwood. So it's had a small trim just a few weeks ago because it had got some extension growth on it. I trimmed it back, took the cones off it, and I'm not going to do any more than that for now. It's been repotted. We're going to keep an eye on it this year, see how these branches develop, and then towards the end of the year, once it drops, we might think about wiring a few of these into position. But I want to see how it grows this year and get to know the tree a little bit more before we start altering too much. And like I say, with this tree, it was all about trying to get this angle here correct, this space through that secondary trunk on the edge of the pot in the right sort of situ. This pot will continue to weather, and we do normally let sort of moss and algae and lichen grow on these rustic pots. So it's like a ship having barnacles on it. It's the same sort of thing with a pot. It will look more natural and in appearance, and less new, less finished. So now that one's done, we're going to lift it outside, give it a water, let it drain. It can just go straight back outside, that can. It's going to be like a low of 4 degrees tonight. There's not an issue for that. That's the old pot it came out of, and then the next job that I've got to do while I'm in the studio is just to take this one out and do a similar procedure with that, and that'll be 2 of my specimen larch trees repotted today,
and then I can get off to my demo this evening. Thank you very much for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any more upcoming videos. Although we're quite busy here, we're trying to find time in between work to just get some videos out to you at a busy time of year, so you can get some enthusiasm and can show you how to do work on your trees over the next few weeks. Thank you very much.